Bang & Olufsen's Beolab 5 loudspeakers are amongst the most powerful and stylish domestic speakers ever produced. They were quite expensive when new, and now that they're out of production, they've held their value extremely well. But are they viable as a second-hand purchase? Would they be the speakers of your dreams, or potentially a financial disaster? We'll be answering those questions in this video, with expert advice from Lee Marriott, who, although I share a surname with him, it's not related to me, as far as I'm aware. Lee runs beoworld.org, which is the world's largest independent Bang & Olufsen fan website, and he's also been trading in Beolab speakers since the introduction of Beolab 5s. So he's one of the most knowledgeable people in the UK about the quirks and foibles of these complex speakers. You can see details of Lee's business on his website at beobuyer.co.uk. Before I hand over to Lee for his expert opinions, we're going to head back to the summer of 2019 briefly, where I was fortunate enough to visit Nick at Bang & Olufsen of Wilmslow, and we're going to give you a brief introduction to just what is so special about these amazing speakers. Now, correct me if I'm wrong on any of the specs. 2003, it was one of the last David Lewis designs, so it's an absolute icon. Technically at the time was groundbreaking, a complete marvel. We've got a four-way speaker design, a high tweeter for the treble with 250 watts on its own amplifier, a mid-treble driver with 250 watts on an amp, a mid-bass driver with a 1000 watt digital amp, and a 15-inch downward firing subwoofer with, again, 1000 watts on the digital amp. I'm sure I'm going to start getting something wrong in a minute. Let's see. So we've got the revolution at the time was a wide parabolic lens which gave 180 degree dispersion to the sound for mid treble and high treble. So if I remember rightly, that was David Moulton of Moulton Labs and Danny Lacaruba of Sausalito Audio, who worked with B&O on this. And this meant that for the first time you didn't have to sit in one particular chair in the room to get the right sound. Anyone within 180 degrees of the front of the speaker got perfect stereo sound.
That's it. Yeah.
And the other revolution is underneath here is a little microphone, which on touch of a button at the top of the speaker pops down and measures the sound, 7 different frequencies between 20 Hertz and 300 Hertz, so covering the bass up to about the pitch of my voice, and it measures the room. Each room interacts with the speakers in its own way, and what this speaker counteracts any errors in the room's sonic signature and gives you perfect bass response.
Sure.
So absolutely revolutionary at the time, and still very, very hard to match, let alone to beat.
It hasn't dated at all.
No, an absolute icon. So a big thank you to Nick at B&O Wilmslow for letting me enjoy the speakers in his showroom, and I think it's the ideal chance to head over to Lee and let's find out, how do these speakers stack up as a second-hand purchase? Are they viable or not?
Hi, I'm Lee from Beobuyer, and I'm just going to do a very quick video for you about buying Beolab 5s in conjunction with Steve at Sounds Heavenly and his channel. I've been buying these for almost 20 years now, and I've bought a lot of pairs. I've seen a lot of problems, a lot of faults, not too many, but there are some common ones that crop up, especially with conditions. So what I'll do is I will start just by working my way around the speaker. We'll start from the bottom. So the first thing that I found was, sometimes you don't see them, is they can have little tears in the bottom of the fabric. This is generally with hoovers and dinking them time after time after time. You can also scuff them with your feet as people walk past. You can end up with, they're approximately, for the covers now, they're about £175 each, but you do need to take the whole head of the speaker off to get them off. You also find, or I've found, that you can have one pair that have been sat by a conservatory window, one pair that have been sat in a nice dark corner in a room. They look great. You take them away, and then all of a sudden one's kind of a light grey and one's almost black. So then if you start replacing one cover at a time, it can get messy. You can have two very odd speakers. If you buy them to put completely separate from each other, where you're not going to have them in the same sort of eye shot, then that's fine. But just to let you know, the covers are quite expensive. Underneath, when you do buy them, you might want to just check under there. Spiders love living in there. Doesn't do them any harm, but it can be quite unsightly. Cobwebs, lots and lots of cobwebs when you're cleaning them. Here, these little top sections, as they get older, now certainly the earlier pairs, they're starting to get sticky, like the Beolab 3s. These trim pieces can be bought, as can this section. Not too cheap, but the trim pieces are fairly cheap. So just see if they're sticky. That's certainly one thing that you want to look for. And then the expensive bits, cosmetic expensive bits, you've got the discs. So you can find quite often where they've been moved or they've just dinked against walls. You can have little scuffs to the corners, to the edges. Now, these bottom discs, they're somewhere around the £400 mark. The middle discs generally don't take much of the bangs, because it's the larger discs that stick out. The middle discs, you're looking around kind of £325 per disc. And then the little top section, they're quite cheap, they just pop off. They're about £45 each. So do check. One thing that I've found through buying these as well is that they can look absolutely fantastic in a dark corner. You will go, oh, absolutely perfect, no scratches whatsoever. You'll then get them in daylight and you'll see very fine hairline scratches. With aluminium being a very, very soft metal, all it takes is somebody with a duster with a little bit of grit in it, just to give it a quick wipe, and then bang, you've got scratches. So just bear in mind that for condition. Functionality, I have had some where there's an internal ribbon, and then when you replace the discs, sometimes it can get brittle. You'll put it back together and all of a sudden this light will stop working, they won't calibrate. That's generally just a new ribbon. It's quite cheap, but it's probably about an hour per speaker to fit. Functionality wise, they're reliable, they're not too bad. It's generally a well accepted thing now that the older pairs can go through chassis. They're about £500 per chassis exchange, so you will need to go to an official B&O dealer, a service centre even, to make those perfect. Also, they're great speakers. I've never had one with a bass driver go. I've had the odd tweeter, but not very often. They're such a strong speaker. Bear in mind as well, even though they are old, they do have software in them, so it's always worth getting the software updated. Not something you can do yourself, unfortunately. Sadly, it does need to go to a B&O engineer. I would always get them software updated. There can be issues where one speaker will cut out, and generally I say it's software. So that's it with Beolab 5s. Serial numbers, that's one thing as well. They are serial numbered individually. You will find it underneath this large disc. You will find the type and serial number. Generally, they should be within a few hundred or a few hundred of each other with a serial number. I have bought pairs where people have, or dealers even, have had two pairs. Then one pair has been sold oddly with the other, and like one's been a 1.7 serial, one's been a 1.8. Not the end of the world if they're similar, because you can just software update them to the same level, so it doesn't really matter. Pin codes on these, the first versions were introduced without pin codes, the really early ones. The second sort of version, from serial number 1777 to 145, they were pin coded. If you turn them on and they're not, there's no pin, then obviously you can go into the settings on the speakers and set yourself a pin code. So that's about it really. That's the main thing is the prices. They are expensive. If they're in rough cosmetic condition, they are expensive to make perfect again. One thing that people are doing now, it costs extra, but you can get the beautiful, like a satin polished finish, or you can get the piano black. I think you can still order those, so you can kind of make yourself a DIY final edition one if you wanted to. You can have these recovered now in a myriad of colours to suit your room. So they're customizable as well now. So if you do see a pair that are quite rough, that do need all of the discs replacing, don't be put off too much. If you buy them at the right price, you could even make them look like a 2015 pair if they're 2003. So that's that. Great speakers. I've taken enough of your time, so I'll sign off now. But if you've any questions, drop me a line at bayobuyer.co.uk or see Steve. Steve does some fantastic cables for these, absolutely brilliant ones. He can link them to anything, so give him a shout. That's it. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.
Thanks, Lee. That's really helpful. Personally, this is something I've been puzzling over for the last few years, whether Beolab 5s are a viable option as a pre-owned purchase or whether they are risky. I think ultimately the answer is they do carry a risk. In the same way that buying, should we say for example, a high-end sports car that's maybe 5, 10, 15 years old, potentially there is always the risk that that item could become a money pit. But buying with care and consideration and always ensuring that you buy from a trusted seller, the risks can be effectively managed. So I'm going to be considering whether I can get a pair of Beolab 5s in the future, and rest assured, if and when I do, you will hear about it on this channel. So let's assume if you go ahead and you do get yourself a pair of these beautiful speakers, how do you use them? How do you connect them? Let's have a quick look. Now basically, these are brilliant speakers for connectivity. You have PowerLink inputs for use with Bang & Olufsen systems. You have RCA phono inputs for a line connection from pretty much any brand of AV system or audio system. And you also have coaxial SPDIF digital inputs. So B&O systems like B&O Sound 9000 can connect this way for the highest quality digital sound, or a wide range of non-B&O systems can also provide this facility. If you use the speakers with a non-B&O system, let's say an AV receiver or a music streamer, it's worth noting you will need a Bang & Olufsen remote control, so maybe a B04, Beolink 1000 or something similar, to power on the speakers before use. So in terms of cabling, the simplest option, if you've got something like a B&O Sound 9000, then you would want PowerLink Mark II cables. These have to be the fully wired 8-pin cables because the speakers will communicate over data link using 2 of the pins inside the cable. So the thinner PowerLink Mark I or Mark III cables won't work for this. I will link in the video description to the cables that we're discussing here, so don't worry. And also for use with a newer Bang & Olufsen TV or music system that has the RJ45 PowerLink connections, then you can use RJ45 to PowerLink cables, again fully wired with all 8 pins connected. So we keep those available. As I mentioned, if you've got B&O Sound 9000 or a B&O Center 2 that has a digital output, then as well as the PowerLink cable, you should actually connect the digital audio output as well for the best sound. So what will happen, for example, with B&O Sound 9000 is that when playing a radio or the auxiliary input as an analog audio signal, it will run over PowerLink. When you play a CD, then the signal will run over the digital cable. It will stay purely in the digital format, but the PowerLink cable is still used for data communication between the system and the speaker. And if you have something like Sonos Connect or Blue Sound Node, then that digital cable is also used and all of your music will stream across that. If you've got a simpler setup, let's say for example we've got a device with a headphone socket, something like a non-B&O TV, Apple Airport Express or similar, then a cable like this will work from the headphone socket of the music source to the phono line inputs of the speakers, and one cable will split apart to run to both speakers. And for an AV receiver or another audio amplifier with RCA phono outputs, then you can use a twin phono to twin phono cable. Again, to the analog line inputs of the speakers, one cable connects two speakers, and you can then use either the AV receiver or the speakers for volume control, because unlike other Beolab speakers, Beolab 5s have their own inbuilt volume adjustment. Please check the link in the video description to see the full list of Beolab 5 cables that are available. And if you've got any questions about connecting your system to Beolab 5s, please get in touch. You can either drop a comment in the video, or you can get in touch by email at steve@soundsheavenly.com, or go to my website at soundsheavenly.com and click on the contact form. Thank you very much for watching. If you're a Bang & Olufsen fan, I'm guessing you are if you've made it this far, then please subscribe. We have a lot more Bang & Olufsen videos for music, movies, connection ideas and reviews coming very soon. So please get involved. Look forward to seeing you in the next video.